Hey guys, welcome to our math lesson. Let's get started by reading our learning target. I can measure the length of an object by choosing and using appropriate tools. So let's talk about that word, measure. Measure means to find the length, the height, or the weight of an object, okay? And the way that we do this is we find, when we measure and we're finding the length, we're trying to find out how long something is or telling the distance from one point to the other. And then we use units, different units to help us find how long something is or measure something. So a unit, it is a part that is used to measure. So we have been learning about several different units throughout the last couple of weeks. One of the ones that we have learned about are inches. Inches is a unit of length, and it's about the size of the quarter across it is about 1 inch. Inches can be found on the measuring tool of a ruler, okay? Centimeters can also be found on the measuring tool of a ruler. Centimeters is also another type of unit of length. And we can think about our pinky. The length across our pinky is about 1 centimeter. Now, these two measurements, inches and centimeters, are the smallest part of some other measuring tools, okay, or units of measurement. So 1 foot is about 12 inches, which is the length of a ruler. Then when we have more than 1 foot, we change that to a plural feet, okay? When we have 3 feet, that makes a yard. So think about a football field. A football field is measured in yards, okay? Also, when we're thinking about centimeters, centimeters are made up of make up meters. So 100 centimeters makes up a meter. Now, we've been talking about this learning target being able to choose and use appropriate tools when we're measuring. So in order to meet this learning target, there's a couple of things that we need to be able to do. We need to be able to use all measuring tools correctly. We need to understand the difference in the measuring tools and the units that those measuring tools are have on them. And then we need to be able to choose the best tool for the object. So we've really been focusing on these first two, using measuring tools correctly, and then knowing the difference between the measuring tools and the unit. And today we're really going to continue practicing those, but also adding in choosing the best tool for our object, okay? So let's go ahead and get in our Ready Math Journal and look at page 531. 531. Let's look at this example problem. Dawson bought a rolling pin. What is the length of the rolling pin to the nearest foot? So remember, length is talking about how long an object is from one point to another, or the distance of that object. So here we have a couple of measuring tools. We have a yardstick, and then we have rulers, okay? So we can use a yardstick to measure the rolling pin. So what we do is we line up the object at the 0. If the 0 is not on there, we line it up at the end of the ruler because that is assumed that's where 0 is. Then we follow all the way across to the end of the object and look at the number underneath. So on the yardstick, what number is underneath the end of that rolling pin? 12 inches. But we want to know to the nearest foot. Remember, nearest means the closest. So 12 inches is how many feet? It's 1 foot. That's why they have these rulers underneath to help us understand that. So this object to the nearest foot is 1 foot because it is 12 inches. So 1 foot. So what is the length of the rolling pin to the nearest foot? It is 1 foot, okay? All right, now it's your turn to go ahead and do these. You're going to do them, and then we're going to check them to make sure that we got the answer correct. And if we didn't get it correct, we can understand why or where we made our mistake, okay? Use a ruler. What is the length of the eraser to the nearest inch? So go ahead and measure the eraser. This will help us with our success criteria of being able to use the measuring tool correctly. All right, go ahead and do that. When you're done, you may unpause the video to check. All right, so how long is this eraser? Where do we start at on our measuring tool? We start at the 0, but if yours does not have a designated 0 like mine, 0 is at the end. Even though it's not on there, it's assumed that 0 is at the end. We follow all the way across. What number is underneath our eraser? All right, so this eraser goes right past that 1 inch mark. Now, we want to know to the nearest inch, so the closest inch. So do you think that this eraser is closer to 1 inch or 2 inches? What do you think? I think it's a little bit closer to 1 inch. If it was further over towards the 2 inches, I would think that. But I believe that this one is about 1 inch long, okay? All right, let's go ahead and continue on to number 2. Number 2 says, think about the length of the actual object. So not the pictures here, but an actual car and an actual wristwatch. Draw lines to match each object with the best tool for measuring it. So the hint says, which tool is used to measure very long objects? Would you use a measuring tape or a centimeter ruler? So you're going to draw a line from the picture, but we're thinking about the actual object to the measuring tool. This is meeting our learning target success criteria of knowing the difference between the measuring tools and the units and being able to choose the best tool for the job, okay? All right, go ahead and draw those lines, and when you're done, you may unpause the video to check. So the watch would be better used or better measured with a centimeter ruler because it is a smaller object. Remember, our buddy hint asked us, what would we use to measure very long objects? Remember, we talked about that yesterday with measuring my board, what tool we would use. So when we're measuring very long objects, we use a measuring tape. So the most appropriate tool to measure the length of the car would be to use the measuring tape, okay? All right, now let's go ahead and go to number 3. What is the length of the wire to the nearest foot, okay? The hint says which mark for feet is the right end of the wire closest to. So what mark for feet is the end of the wire closest to? This goes back to our success criteria of being able to use measuring tools correctly and understanding the differences in measuring tools. When you're done answering this question, you may unpause to continue. All right, so we start our wire at the 0. If the 0 is not there, we start it at the end because that's where the 0 is assumed. We go all the way across and find the end of our wire, and we look down. All right, remember our buddy hint says what mark for feet is right at the end of the closest wire. So here we have 2 foot. So this wire is about 2 feet long. 1 foot would be too short and 3 feet would be too big. So it's about 2 feet long. It says Kyle chooses D as the answer. How did Kyle get his answer? Kyle thought because the length was greater than 2 feet that it would be 3 feet, but 3 feet would be too long. It's really closer to 2 feet, okay? All right, guys, so you will practice with our learning target on the next couple of pages, okay? Remember, in order to be successful with our learning target, I can measure the length of an object by choosing and using appropriate tools. You need to be able to use the measuring tool correctly, understand the difference in between the measuring tools and the units, and then be able to choose the best tool for the object. All right, guys, great job. I can't wait to continue with measurement. Bye.